places I will call. Incline your ear to me anew, and hear my cry for mercy, Lord. Were you to count my sinful ways, how could I come before your throne? Yet full forgiveness meets my gaze. I stand redeemed by grace alone. I will wait for you. I will wait for you on your word. I will rely. I will wait for you. Surely wait for you till my soul is satisfied. So put your hope in God alone. Take courage in His power to save. Completely and forever won by Christ emerging from the grave. I will wait for you. I will wait for you on your word. I will rely. I will wait for you. Surely wait for you till my soul is satisfied. Now He has come to make a way, and God Himself has paid the price, that all who trust in Him today find healing in His sacrifice. I will wait for you. I will wait for you on your word. I will rely. I will wait for you. Surely wait for you till my soul is satisfied. I will wait for you. I will wait for you through the storm and through the night. I will wait for you. Surely wait for you, for your love is my delight. Out of the depths I cry to you. In darkest places I will call. Incline your ear to me anew, and hear my cry for mercy, Lord.
Hello, Covenant family. How's everyone doing? Are you ready for our next NCC question and answer? Today we're doing question and answer number 9, but to begin with, we are going to go back and take a quick look at question and answer number 8, which is the 10 Commandments. Last week we learned some little sign language to go along with it, so let's see if we can remember all 10 Commandments, okay? The first one, you shall have no other gods before me. Number 2, you shall not make for yourself an idol, okay? Number 3, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Number 5, honor your father and your mother. Number 6, you shall not murder. Number 7, you shall not commit adultery. Number 8, you shall not steal. Number 9, you shall not give false witness. And number 10, you shall not covet. Okay, did you get them all? I'm anxious to see how many of you guys can remember these and memorize them over the next few weeks. But for now, we are going to be here starting to learn question and answer number 9. And to help us with that, we have Bert Van Harmelink today.
Good morning. My name is Bert Van Harmelin. I am an elder here at Hebron, and I'm going to read for you this morning question and answer 9. What does God require in the first, second, and third commandments? First, that we know and trust God as the only true and living God. Second, that we avoid all idolatry and do not worship God improperly. Third, that we treat God's name with fear and reverence, honoring also His word and works.
Okay, thanks for doing that, Bert. Now, we were talking a few weeks ago about there being 2 different types of laws. Remember when the man came to Jesus and said, what's the greatest law? Jesus said, love God and love your neighbors as much as you love yourself. And we said that almost all the laws in the Bible have to do with one of these types of laws, loving God or loving our neighbors. Well, today we're going to be looking at the first 3 10 Commandments. And we're going to learn that all 3 of those commandments teach us something about how to love God. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that upward kind of love. Okay, now the first 2 commandments, sometimes people think that they are kind of the same. They kind of sound the same, but they actually have a very different focus. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. The first one is talking about whom we are supposed to worship. Okay, worship the only true God. The second one is telling us how to worship that God by not making an idol of Him. Okay, so let's first talk about a little bit about whom we are going to worship. You know, before God gave these 10 commandments to the Israelites, they were in slavery in Egypt, right? And if you guys were a part of VBS a few years ago, you'll remember that we studied the life of Moses and how he went to Egypt and how God used Moses to bring the Israelites out of Egypt and out of slavery. And he did all these miraculous things to accomplish that. And then he brought them to the mountain, Mount Sinai. And at the mountain, the first thing that God says to them before giving them the 10 Commandments, He said, I am the Lord your God. Remember, I am the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of that land of slavery. Okay? And then He says, commandment number 1, you shall have no other gods before me. Okay? So God wanted the Israelites to know, I need to be most important in your life. You can't have any other thing in your life that's more important than me. I am the only true God. Now, this might be easy to say, and we might say, yeah, I believe in God, I worship only God, but how can we know if that is true for our own lives? For me, I think sometimes I stop and I ask myself 1 or 2 different questions. The first question I can ask is, What brings me the most joy? When do I feel the most joyful? Is it when I'm spending time with God? Is it when I'm worshiping Him with other people? Is it when we're in covenant kids together learning about Jesus and singing songs to Him? Is it when I'm reading His Word or talking to Him in prayer? Is that when I'm most joyful? And if I'm really honest with myself, sometimes no, that's not when I'm most joyful. And then I have to stop and think, maybe I'm putting something else above God. Maybe I'm not worshiping God as the only true God. Maybe I have something else that's more important in my life. The second question I sometimes ask myself is, who do I trust? When I have a problem, when something goes wrong in my life, who's the first person that I think of going to? Is it my mom or dad? Is it my husband? Is it my friend? Do I go on Facebook and share my problem and try to get advice from everyone? Or do I run to God first? Again, those two things can kind of help us do a heart check as to, are we really putting God first? Does He bring us the most joy? And do we trust Him? Is He the first one that we run to when life gets a little bit tough? Okay, so that's the first commandment. Who do we worship? The one true God. The second commandment tells us how to worship Him. And God says, I don't want you to make an idol of me. I don't want you to make any kind of an image of me. Now, why do you think God said that? Was this a problem? Yeah. You know, God, we worship an invisible God, a God that can't be seen. Okay? And what would happen, do you think, if we started to try to create images to remind us of God? Well, they're going to be things from our imaginations. They're just going to be made up from man's mind. It's not going to be truly what God is like. And every time we make an image, we're going to lose a little bit more of an idea of what God is like. So, how do we actually know Him? How do we know what God is like? He's told us. God doesn't want us to worship Him with images. He wants us to know Him through His Word and to get to know Him through the Bible. This is the way that God has given us to get to know Him. And as we study the Word, and this is the cool thing, we learn about one part of that Trinity, we learn about all three of the parts, but we also learn about Jesus. And in the book of Colossians, there's a great verse, Colossians 1:15, that says that Jesus is the perfect image of God. Let me say that again. Jesus is the image of God. So God says, don't make for yourself any idols or any images of me, but get to know me, get to know my Son. If you get to know Jesus through the Bible, you will have the perfect image of who God is. Now, the third commandment is talking about not using God's name in a way, not misusing God's name, to use it in fear and reverence. And this is a tough one in our society. Everywhere you go, every TV show you watch, you're going to hear people using God's name as if it was almost a swear word. People use it when they're excited about something, and you'll hear God's name when people are angry, and you'll hear it when they're happy or sad. People say it all the time. But are they using it in reverence and in fear? Probably not. I want you to think about this. You know, if God is the person that brings us the most joy, and if we are to worship only Him, and if He has done such marvelous, great things for us, are we going to want to go around misusing His name? No. So we need to be very careful about how we use that name of God. He wants us to use it, but He wants us to use it in worship of Him, in reverence and respect, not to misuse it without thinking. Okay, so let's be careful about that. Okay, let's go back now and take a look at our question today and see how well we can do. Okay, so the question is, what does God require in the first, second, and third commandments? Okay, and the first part of it is, first, that we know God as the only true God. Can you read that one with me? First, that we know God as the only true God. Okay. Second, that we avoid all idolatry. Can you read that with me? Second, that we avoid all idolatry. And third, that we treat God's name with fear and reverence. Can you read that? Third, that we treat God's name with fear and reverence. Okay, excellent job. We'll see you next week for question and answer number 10. Fantastic.
What does God require in the first, second, and third commandments?
What does God require in the first, second, and third commandments?
That we know God as the only true God.
That we avoid all idolatry.
That we treat God's name with fear and reverence. What does God require in the fourth and fifth commandments?
What does God require in the fourth and fifth commandments?
That on the Sabbath day we spend time in worship of God.
That we love and honor our father and mother.
What does God require in the sixth, seventh, and eighth commandments?
What does God require in the sixth, seventh, and eighth commandments?
That we do not hurt or hate our neighbor. That we live purely and faithfully. That we do not take with the permission that which belongs to someone else.
What does God require in the ninth and 10th commandments? What does God require in the ninth and 10th commandments?
That we do not lie, that we do not lie, that we do not lie or deceive. That we are content, not envying What does God require in the
first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th commandments?
Hello, Hebron Church. It is a joy to be with you today. My name is Alyssa Esperez, and I work on the communications team at Compassion Canada. I'm here to share how Compassion is responding to the COVID-19 crisis. The first thing you need to know is that this is indeed a crisis, unlike anything we've seen in generations. In the countries where Compassion works, this is not just a health crisis. This is an economic and a food crisis. The World Bank predicts that this year, because of the COVID-19 crisis, extreme global poverty rates will rise for the first time since 1998. The World Food Program predicts that global hunger rates will double by the end of this year. Some have suggested that we're all in this together, but I would argue that we're not. For children and families living in poverty, things like government support, social distancing, and stocking up on groceries are privileges they just don't have. It's hard to stay 6 feet apart when your home is only 6 feet wide. I love the quote that's been going around. We're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats. For us here in Canada, we're on a cruise ship. But for children living in poverty, they're on a raft, just trying to survive. In the midst of all of this, compassion is responding. We are providing food, hygiene, and rent support, the three most critical needs at this time. We're also providing emergency medical care as needed and utilizing the available technology to amplify our child protection efforts and spiritual and educational support programs. The best part of all of this is that it is being done by the local church. This has always been a strength of Compassion's ministry, our local church partners, but it's even more so now during this unprecedented crisis. Our church partners are embedded in their communities. They have been there long before COVID-19, will be there long after, and are in it now with their communities. They know the needs of their community and know how to quickly and effectively respond. Many of our church partners have received exceptions to lockdown orders from their government. That's how essential and life-saving the work they are doing is. Their work is as critical as ever, and they need our support now more than ever. In the face of need, unlike anything we've ever seen, it's time to respond unlike we ever have before. That's why Compassion has launched the We Rise as One campaign to meet the critical needs of children living in poverty right now. If you already sponsor children with Compassion, I want to say thank you. Please keep up your support. The child you sponsor needs it now more than ever. Currently, as regular in-person Compassion programming is suspended, sponsorship funds are going to meet the critical needs of the child you sponsor. But as you can imagine, sponsorship isn't going to be enough in the face of such overwhelming need. Families have lost their source of income as prices of essentials like food and hygiene supplies have been hiked. Starvation is a real risk for families living in extreme poverty. So as Compassion Canada, we have set a goal of raising $1.5 million this summer as our first push towards meeting the immediate critical needs of children and their families. This money will go to our disaster relief fund to provide food, hygiene supplies, shelter, and medical care to families in desperate need. We've heard stories from our church partners of caregivers bursting into tears of relief when Compassion staff delivered groceries. That is what your donation to the We Rise as One campaign will provide. This is where I want to invite you to respond by making a donation to the We Rise as One campaign. I want to invite you to pause right now and think about what you can set aside to contribute. Many of us have experienced huge changes to our lifestyle in this season. I know for me, it's been months since I've had a daily $5 latte. That's money I've been able to set aside to give to this campaign. Perhaps for you, it's what you've saved by not eating out, not taking transit, not buying gas, or not going on vacation this summer. I believe God has equipped His church for such a time as this, and that when we give generously, God will honor that, and our impact for children and families living in poverty will be greater than we could ever imagine. Your church will be collecting your donations towards this campaign. I can't wait to see the impact you make together as a church. As I close, I just want to say thank you. I know that this is a difficult season for many, with some experiencing immense loss of jobs, milestone events, or even life. That you would still open your hearts to the needs of children in this time is a beautiful and immensely impactful reflection of God's heart. Thank you so much.